This is one of those videos that came about because of a specific request by someone. He had been looking for a video on how to do tubular right-angle weave. Surprisingly, I didn't have one. I just, somehow have missed it. And there really wasn't anything out there that either one of us could find. So I wanted to address it. And as I worked through all of the information about tubular right-angle weave, the thing is, tubular right-angle weave is also, it can be cubic right-angle weave, which is PRAW. It can be prismatic right-angle weave, which is doing right-angle weave within a tubular shape using any different number of sides. I know, that all sounds really confusing. So let me bring you into the beads and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so right-angle weave stitch. When it's flat, it looks like this, with one bead per side. So we've made all these little units here. Each one of these is a square. So these 4 beads together is a square. This wall is shared by the square next to it, which is square, so if all of this looks like gobbledygook to you, I would refer you to my video on how to do flat right angle weave. And I will pop a link up in the eye up above. I'll also put a link down in the description field that will teach you how to do flat right angle weave. So I'm kind of assuming that you know how to do flat right angle weave for this video, okay? Now, when you turn it into a tubular shape, on these little samples that I made for you, I used 2 beads per side on all of the little squares. Here's how tubular right angle weave becomes prismatic right angle weave. Because when you turn right angle weave into a tube, you can choose how many sides there are in your tube. So if you do 3 sides in your tube, it becomes a triangle. If you do 4 sides in your tube, it's a cube, and that is cubic right angle weave. If you do 5 sides in your tube, which is generally what I do when I'm actually thinking tubular, then, and you can see here where we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides of this tube. So this is a pentagon. Then you can do it with 6 tubes per side or 7 tubes per side. I'm sorry, 7 units per side. That's where the prismatic part comes in, because that kind of covers the entire variation of all of these things. The technique is identical for all of them. The only difference is how many times you're going to make a square for each round as you're growing your tube longer, okay? So that's what all that means. Now, there are a couple different ways to actually make tubular right angle weave. You can either make a flat piece as long as you want it and then zip it together, which is what I'm going to do with this piece. I'm going to show you how to do the zip on this and turn this into a tube. Or you can build it one entire round at a time and build it this way. I personally like to do it if the pattern lets me. Some patterns, because you're shaping and things, you can't. But if you're just making a long tube just to wear as a necklace or whatever, I prefer to do it flat and then zip it up. If you do it this way, where you're just doing it one row at a time and building it taller, you're probably going to want some kind of dowel on the inside to help it all keep its shape. The reason these all look so squared up right here is because I went around each one of these squares with my needle and thread twice to really get super tight tension and square them up like this. But, it probably is going to look a little loosey-goosey. It's going to be hard to hold on to. So in this case, using a dowel to start it off is a good option for you. I wanted to show you that when you pick your dowel size, you want to be a little careful and make sure that you don't pick a dowel that is too big. This is a 5 around. You can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sticky outy beads there on the end. But on this one, so that's the same thing as this, but on this one, each one of these squares only has 1 bead per side instead of 2 beads per side. So that's the difference there. I'm using size 8 seed beads as I'm doing this. But I wanted to show you that, notice how this end, I'm going to kind of try to flatten this out a little bit here. This end is flared out a little bit more than this end. The reason that is because when I started this, I started using a 4mm dowel, which fits in there perfectly fine. But what was really happening is that it was a little bit too big, and it was causing a little bit too much thread to be shown right here. And the big thing was that it was making my tension loose. So when I downsized, then I downsized to a 3.5mm dowel, and it was still a little bit too big. Finally, I went down to a 3mm dowel. That made my tension nice and tight here on the end, and I felt much more comfortable with it. So the rule is, or the lesson actually is, make sure that the dowel you're using isn't too big. So let me talk for a second about dowels. And let me show you this from up here. You can go to Home Depot or Michael's or something like that and get dowels. But you know what the most effective dowel set is? This is a very inexpensive set of bamboo knitting needles that I got on Amazon. And so this is one, and of course you get 2 of them, right? So you get 2 full sets, and they are, you get increments. This one was, I think the smallest one is a 1mm up to like a 12mm or something like that, 10mm. 10, no, there's actually, yeah, 10. This went up to a 10. I'm rarely going to have use for a dowel that's that thick, but I've got it if I need it. So this was the best investment for dowels. You know, it even has an end that helps you kind of make sure that your beadwork doesn't come off it. I highly suggest doing this if you like to use dowels, if you're a dowel person. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to start this, and I'm going to do it on that 3mm dowel this time. There we go. We'll come back to the hands here. And I'm going to move kind of this stuff all out of the way here. One of the other things that I wanted to show you about using the doing the dowel and the cubic right-angle weave is, for instance, this is the beginning of a project that is actually in my book, and it's a project called Ladies Who Lunch. And what I'm demonstrating for you guys is exactly what that necklace is. It's doing, this is five around, so 5 units, 5 squares around. It's using 2 beads per side on each one of those squares. You can use the dowel to build it, and you can build it 1 square at a time off of this. Actually, I'm right-handed, so I would be building it this direction. Or what you can do is create this flat piece of right-angle weave, the length of the necklace that you want, and then you'll zip it up. So you've got 2 options. And I actually, in the instructions in the book, have you do it flat and zip it up. I think it's a little bit easier that way, but I'll show you both. So let me actually also show you what this necklace is going to look like. This is the project. So it's a tubular right-angle weave that I have embellished with 3mm pearls. In my case, on this new one that I'm making, I'm going to embellish it with drucks. And I think I'm just completely in love with this plum metallic satin. I actually had these special made for me in the Czech Republic, so I'm the only store that carries this particular color. And you've heard me probably refer to my favorite color is Blurple, which is the blues and the purples together. And I'm using my size 11 0460E metallic blue-green iris with it. And so I'm going to have the perfect Blurples necklace when I finish that up. And this video has inspired me to do that. You guys are trouble. Okay, so let me get out some beads here to start working on the dowel with. I'll show you that first. And I've got thread right over here, I believe. Yes, my space is getting a little bit cluttered over here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do when I create this is I'm going to create a little flat strip first, and then we're gonna fold the end together to create the round piece. So I think what I will do is do this 2 beads per side, because I think it's gonna be easier to see what's going on. But remember, the same rules apply no matter how many beads per side you're using. So 1, 2, 3 sides and 4 sides. So that's 8 beads for my 4 sides. And I'm just doing regular flat right angle weave first. And like I said, I've got a video on how to do this part already out there. I like to work on the opposite side of my tail, so I'm just working my way over. Couple of tricks for right angle weave that I've mentioned before, but I will keep mentioning, is that to get your squares nice and squared off, you want to move in one direction at a time with your needle and thread. It can be very tempting, like right now I know that I want to go across the 2 on the bottom plus the 2 on the side. So I want to end up right here. And you can see where I can take my needle and pass it through all 4 of those beads at once, but then it's going to retain that curve instead of it being super squared off. So instead, what I do, and I am religious about this, is I pass through the 2 beads on the bottom, tighten. Now I'm going to pass through the 2 beads on the side, because I'm moving in a 90-degree angle here, and tighten. So now that has created a bend in your thread. It still is going to do a little bit of this, but of this kind of rounding. Because I'm using size 8 beads, it's on the bigger side and that kind of thing. But that will make a huge difference for you guys in being able to see your right angle weave units, especially if you're just doing 1 bead per side. Remember that when you're moving your needle through beads in a certain direction, don't be tempted to cheat and go through multiple directions at the same time, because it will affect the look of your beadwork big time. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, and I'm kind of flipping this around just so I can get the angles to pass through the beads. I'm going to do this 5 around so that it's really more tubular shaped. You can see how it's kind of looking crazy over here, but we know that our numbers are right. Keep trying to avoid this bead because he's funky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's get to that outside edge. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 units right now. I'm going to join this end to this end. That's going to make my 5th unit. So I'm going to fold this like a taco. And here's the thing. I want to look at the 2 beads that are attached right there to my tail thread, and the 2 beads right here that are attached to my working thread. And I'm only going to work with those beads. I'm not going to worry about any of those other guys. So basically, if you are using the wall building method, here's my right wall of this building, here's my left wall of this building. I need to add the ceiling and I need to add the floor. So I picked up 2 beads for the ceiling. I'm going to pass down the left wall. I'm going to kind of be really careful as I tighten because I don't want to let go of this. If I tighten too hard, you can pull it out of your hands, and that's kind of a pain. Here's my 2 beads for the floor. I'm going to pass up those 2 beads on the right wall, like so. Tighten all this up. I'm going to pass across the ceiling beads again. Okay, now let's look at what we've got going on here. Now we've got the entire first floor of this apartment building done. From here on out, we're going to start building units on top of these 2 bead units that we have here up at the top. Most bead instructors will have you orient so that you're building this direction. I find the angles with your hands very awkward to do that, so I just rotate this 90 degrees and I build off to the right, or if you're a left-handed person, you would build off to the left. The steps that you're taking are absolutely identical. It's only the orientation of how you're holding it. And I just find it much easier to hold it this way. So if my right angle weave looks different than the way you've been taught, trust me, we're doing the same thing. It's just that I'm holding it this direction instead of up and down, okay? So here I have 2 beads, so I need to add 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, pass back through those 2 that I already had. Put my finger over them as I pull so that it tightens well. Okay, so now I'm ready to add the next set, but I can't just go straight across, right? Because that would put thread in that intersection. So now instead I'm going to go up this wall. So here's where having a dowel is going to be your friend. And because see how this is also loosey-goosey and everything? I'm going to take this 4mm dowel, because I'm doing 2 beads per side. That's actually going to be a little bit small, so let's go find us a slightly bigger dowel. Here's a 5mm. I think that looks pretty good. We could actually go up a little bit. Let's see here. See what the great thing is having all of this? Okay, so here's the 5.5. Because now I'm not making multiple trips to the store trying to figure all this out. Okay, so that will do it. I think that'll work well. You could probably go up to a 6, but I don't want to push it because I don't want it to deform the way that one sample that I showed you was. So this just kind of gives you something to hold it against, and it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. Okay, so here I came up the 2 beads on the side here. I've got 2 beads for the floor. I've got 2 beads for the right wall. I need to add a ceiling and a left wall. So from here on the rest of this row, I only need to add 4 beads instead of 6. And I will pass through those 2. You will feel, if you've never worked with the dowel before, you will feel very awkward at first. I know I did. And you're going to want to probably practice with the dowel before you actually work on a project where you're using the dowel. I would say it took me probably starting 3 or 4 times over again before I got comfortable with how I wanted to hold the dowel, how I needed to bring my thread around so it didn't get wrapped around the edge, that kind of thing. So just know that this is a learning curve. It won't take you long. Use some size 8 seed beads, do it a couple of times. You'll figure out how you personally need to hold everything to keep it all working the way you want it to. Okay, so I have just finished. Let's see, we have to go down here, and then I will have finished this unit. All right, so this is what it looks like in my orientation that I like to use. This is what it looks like in the vertical orientation. So there's our second apartment there. Now I want to build the next apartment over. This time I can go this across, and I'm going to show you why. Because it doesn't create thread that goes directly across the intersection. See how it's going to be in that curve where all the threads are. So here we are, we're ready to add 4 more beads. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going down the left wall because you have to connect all this together into the one cube. across the floor. Okay, so now that's good. You can't go directly across, right? Because then your thread's going to show. So you have to go up. This is just the same as it was 2 stitches ago. You're going to be alternating with the going up and then going across. So here we have 4 more to add. 1, 2, 3, 4. We come here to attach the next unit. Oops, see, this is what I mean, is you have to be careful not to get your thread around that dowel. Like so. Up the side. Across the top. Because what I'm doing is I'm navigating my way over here so that I can add the next apartment. Coming down. And then here's the one where I can go across because that thread is going to be at the corner. This is the last apartment that we need to add on this side, which means that we actually have 3 of the 4 sides, because here's that first unit that we added. So we've got the right wall, the floor, and the left wall. The only thing that we need to add is the ceiling up here. So I'm going to pass through these 2 beads on the left to get up to that ceiling. We're going to pick up the 2 beads, pass down through the right wall, pass through the floor, pass up the left wall, and now we can pass through the next unit, the ceiling over there. We just completed that whole level, that whole line, and so now we're ready to add another row. Okay, so a couple of things here. I probably stepped through this a little fast because I do have a video on how to do cubic right angle weave. I will pop a link up to that video in the I field above, and then also in the description field down below. And I do step through that a little more slowly, but you'll notice that it's exactly the same as cubic right angle weave. You're adding these units one at a time. It's just that you have 5 sides instead of 4, but everything else is the same. So if you know how to do cubic, you know how to do prismatic. There you go. You're already set. So that's how you would do it using the dowel and building it 1 row at a time. Now, let me show you my more preferred method, which is doing this flat and then zipping it up. And I lost my needle at some point here. Let's get a needle threaded. Threading a needle on camera is one of the hardest things to do, but yay, I got it first time. Okay, so here is a flat piece of right angle weave. Let's say that this is all the length that Barbie needs for her necklace. And now I want to turn this into a tube instead of making it flat, because she wants a tubular right angle weave necklace. Okay, so the first thing is I want to join the long sides together. That means my thread needs to be coming out on one of the long sides. Here I'd already moved it up to the short side as if I were going to add another row and add more length here. Instead, I want the thread to be coming out of one of the beads on the side. So I'm actually going to just back it up by 1 stitch. There it is. Now my thread is coming out one of the sticky outies along the side. Here is where we're going to fold it like a taco. And you're going to notice how the pairs line up here. So let's continue with the apartment analogy. You've got all of the right walls and left walls. What we're adding are ceilings and floors here. And all I'm going to do is I'm coming out the end here. I'm picking up 1 bead. I'm passing up the right wall. Now it needs a ceiling, this unit. Picking up a bead for my ceiling, passing down the left wall. And there's that first cube made right there. Now to get to where I need to add the next ceiling, which is going to be up here, because here's going to be the wall, the floor now for this next one, and you need to add a bead here, we're going to have to do a whole bunch of weaving around to get there. So we're going to have to come across, up, over, and then up, and then I'll be ready to add another bead. So one of the things that I remember when I was learning cubic right angle weave was that it seemed like I did a whole lot of weaving around through the beads without adding any new beads, and it must be wrong. Well, the truth is, it's right. It's what you have to do to get it in the right spot. Okay, so you're just going to continue adding beads this way. Add it in, then maneuver to where you're going to add the next bead, which you'd want to be coming out over here. So it's super simple to do the zip up. I like doing that a lot better than I like doing the dowel. But that is basically it with right angle weave. It's prismatic, it's cubic, it's triangle, it's pentagon, it's everything. And now you know how to do it. Happy beading.